Mr. Saktiandi Supaat.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise in support of the motion. We all have a responsibility to current and future generations to do our best to mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. While there is still hope, I would like to focus on two key words in the motion: an inclusive transition. This means our transition to a low-carbon society must benefit not just Singapore, but Singaporeans as a whole. To me, this also means our strategy cannot be go green at any and all costs. This is why the Singapore Green Plan 2030, launched in February last year, is a comprehensive strategy, which includes the green economy as one of its 5 key pillars. I aim to speak briefly on the green economy in 3 areas: transitioning to a world with carbon tax, carbon trading, and green financing employment opportunities. First, moving to a carbon tax world. This year's review of the carbon tax level and its forward trajectory will be an opportune time to further elaborate on plans for a carbon taxation system. In doing so, perhaps the government can consider the following few points. First, to be effective in guiding behavior, taxes must offer a certain and transparent price pattern so that businesses can project their potential expenses and plan accordingly. Instead of reviewing our carbon tax rate every 3 to 4 years, can we establish a fixed formula for the carbon tax rate to evolve over a longer period of time? Second, given that different countries may have different climate change standards and measures, Singapore may wish to eventually explore a carbon border adjustment mechanism to equalize the carbon prices of Singapore's products and imported products from outside Singapore. Like a similar mechanism introduced in the EU, this aims to prevent carbon leakage, that is, companies from transferring production to countries where climate change measures are looser than in Singapore and are cheaper to comply with. At the same time, this measure can help to promote GHG or greenhouse gas reduction efforts in countries outside Singapore and to spur others to take climate change measures seriously. Third, as we increase carbon taxes, and if we do so in various ways and various levels, I ask for carbon pricing to be part of a comprehensive mitigation strategy. It should contain supporting measures to enhance the effectiveness and adaptability. I think Member Dennis Tan mentioned about just transition measures, and I would like to add on that just transition measures are indeed needed to assist low-income households and vulnerable workers when it's introduced. Fourth, while IMF economists have suggested that high-income economies should aim for a carbon price of $50 to $75 per tonne by 2030, we must be careful to pace any increase in our carbon tax so that businesses can adapt and not be forced to leave Singapore. One possibility is to first set the carbon tax level at least around $8 to 9 tonnes per CO2e using the S&P Platts CEC as a spot reference, or slightly higher to inject some urgency for emitters to accelerate their decarbonizing plans. That flaw is where the voluntary market is valuing and trading carbon credits, a concept that I will turn to now. The other main way countries use to bring down carbon emissions is to establish a cap and trade system which caps the total level of greenhouse gas emissions and allow companies with low emissions to sell their extra carbon credits or offsets to larger emitters. There's also the voluntary carbon markets for companies and individuals which can coexist with compliance markets created and driven by regulation, essentially for companies or individuals to buy carbon credits voluntarily to offset their unavoidable emissions. Carbon markets allow for companies to buy and sell these tradable carbon credits that represent reduction, avoidance, or removal of a certain amount of emissions from the atmosphere. According to estimates from McKinsey, the annual global demand for carbon credits could reach up to 1.5 to 2 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2030 and up to 7 to 13 gigatons by 2050. Depending on the price scenarios and the underlying drivers, the market size in 2030 could be between $5 billion and $30 billion at the low end and more than $50 billion at the high end. So the race to decarbonize in Asia is picking up pace, with China introducing its national carbon market in third quarter last year, while other ASEAN nations, including Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines, have taken steps towards establishing their own frameworks to trade carbon credits. Singapore has already pledged to reduce carbon emission intensity by 36% from 2005 levels by 2030. So it is therefore unsurprising that Singapore already plans to become a carbon services and trading hub. This is among the various recommendations of the FEC Emerging Stronger Task Force in May 2021. We need to do this fast as part of our green growth plans, as other countries in the region are also looking into it. Despite the opportunities, the carbon trading market has long been plagued by low liquidity, poor risk management, limited data availability, and inadequate financing. While the establishment of Climate Impact X, a new global carbon exchange established in Singapore to facilitate the sale of large-scale, high-quality carbon credits, is undoubtedly a promising development, it will be useful if the government can share on how the carbon trading value chain is progressing. It would be good to also know our plans to further tap on Singapore's reputation for integrity and strength in professional and financial services, such as to establish a carbon credit registry to serve Asia, much like the Vera registry and the gold standard impact registry in the US. There is a need to build or enhance the ecosystem, which needs to link up the four types of key players: the upstream project developers, NGOs that certify projects, brokers and traders to facilitate the access to carbon credits, and end users, such as companies or individuals, committing to offset part or all of their GHG emissions. Another aspect is we can also enhance the existing carbon exchanges here as they develop standardized contracts for carbon credits and set a benchmark price. In addition, from an infrastructure perspective, the government can and must eventually work on the regulatory oversight of carbon markets. This would enhance the integrity and standards of carbon credits traded here, making us more attractive as a hub. In addition, there may be a need to have plans to roll out developmental courses that we can upskill Singaporeans to take advantage of these new economic trends, especially those in the banking and financial services sector. Mr. Speaker, in Malay, please. Akhir sekali, mengenai prospek pertumbuhan guna tenaga pembiayaan hijau atau green financing. Apabila ekonomi kita beralih ke arah yang lebih hijau, peluang pekerjaan baru dalam ekonomi hijau akan timbul. Laporan permintaan kemahiran untuk ekonomi masa depan yang dikeluarkan tahun lepas oleh Skills Future Singapore mengenal pasti ekonomi hijau sebagai kawasan pertumbuhan pekerjaan utama bagi Singapura. Laporan itu menekankan bahawa hari ini terdapat lebih daripada 450 peranan pekerjaan dalam 17 sektor yang memerlukan kemahiran hijau, termasuk perkhidmatan keuangan, manufacturing atau perkilangan, perdagangan dan ketersambungan, hospitality dan persekitaran terbina. Kita boleh mengharapkan lebih banyak pekerjaan menjadi lebih hijau. Menggunakan UK sebagai contoh, kini terdapat hampir 1,5 juta pekerjaan dalam perniagaan rendah karbon dan rantaian bekalan mereka di seluruh UK. Daripada jumlah itu, dianggarkan terdapat kira-kira 6,500 pekerjaan dalam subsektor perkhidmatan keuangan dan nasihat rendah karbon sehingga 2018. Ekonomi rendah karbon dan tenaga renewable di UK bernilai 46.7 bilion sterling pada 2018, naik 15% dari paras 2015. Oleh itu, kita perlu mencari cara untuk membangunkan kumpulan bakat untuk membantu Singapura kekal sebagai destinasi menarik untuk perniagaan, terutamanya mereka yang meletakkan premium pada sustainability. Adalah penting bagi pemerintah dan perniagaan untuk membantu pekerja melengkapkan diri mereka untuk mengambil pekerjaan hijau ini, sama ada dalam sektor sedia ada atau dalam sektor baharu. Kos masa dan peluang di pihak pekerja juga mesti diambil kira untuk membolehkan mereka memperoleh kemahiran baru dan menyesuaikan diri dengan persekitaran perniagaan yang lebih hijau. Salah satu sektor ialah sektor kewangan yang akan memainkan peranan penting untuk menyediakan pelaburan bagi projek-projek sustainability dan seterusnya membantu membentuk ekonomi rendah karbon. Tapi kita mesti membina dan mengekalkan saluran paip pekerja hijau. Apabila sektor pembiayaan hijau atau green financing berkembang, kita perlu menyediakan modal insan atau human capital lebih awal dengan pengetahuan untuk menyelaraskan pelaburan dengan prinsip sustainability dan keuangan hijau. Pasukan petugas industri keuangan hijau mengumumkan rancangan untuk melancarkan bengkel bagi institusi keuangan dan korporat untuk membina kapasiti dalam keuangan hijau dari Mei 2021 hingga April 2022. Jadi diharapkan lebih ramai akan hadir untuk bengkel ini. Saya harap pemerintah akan meningkatkan lagi dan adakan yang menjadi program pendidikan yang berterusan. Mr. Speaker, but beyond all these domestic efforts, our greening of the financial sector allows for a more effective way for Singapore to engage regional partners to accelerate regional climate sustainability projects. Our approach has been one of not curbing directly the financing of brown activity, such as palm oil or coal-related activity, but one that is to wait for greener alternatives to replace it. But what more can be done to engage and work with regional partners to accelerate regional climate sustainability, which will be more effective in the long run? Mr. Speaker, sir, with strong support from the government and our stellar reputation as a global financial hub, with a high level of integrity, we are in a good position to fortify this green economy pillar of our green plan. It is a fine balance to ensure that we achieve an inclusive transition to a low-carbon economy with the participation of companies, financial institutions, and other stakeholders in Singapore. In doing so, we must train to capitalize on new opportunities, strike the right balance to manage the trade-offs, and do more to raise awareness of our efforts to build a green economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the motion.